Hi, this is Grant. I wanted to give you an overview on how the new receipts interactions are defined for Expense Cloud. Basically, what we have here is two panels, one for receipts and one for expenses. This is somewhat different than the current setup in that we have primarily the expenses panel and then a floating panel on the left that contains one receipt. So what I'm going to do is just do a couple basic walkthroughs that more or less mirror the Word document or the Google Doc that I created on the side. So initially, when a user first signs up, or if they've already submitted all their expenses and they don't have any receipts, this would be the default state that they would see. So how they add images is they can either click on Add Receipt here to bring up the browse function within the browser, which will basically let the person upload a file from their computer. This is pretty much standard procedure. Or if they cancel this, we wanted to enable drag and drop. So in this case, we have a draggable target here, and we have an instruction to the user saying drag files here to upload receipts or browse. So for the purposes of prototyping, I just have a sample object from Azure, over here, that say this is a file on my desktop. So when I click and start dragging that, the desktop will have a listener. It's like Gmail or Dropbox. As soon as I drag that file into the browser window perimeter or the area, it's going to be listening for that kind of event. So it's going to cue the user to say, hey, you can drop this file here to upload as a receipt. So I'm going to go and do that. So this sample object, that's a receipt, I'm going to drag here. And what you're going to see is, first, it's going to show me a progress indicator that I'm uploading the file, and then it'll fade and you'll see the file populate in the background. Uploading one file, confirmation message that fades away. We call that a passive confirmation modal. No, it's really a message. And then here I have one receipt that's represented here. Say the date is June. Each receipt has the upload date, the name of the receipt file, which could be image_x or whatever else. Depends on how the files are imported into the system. So that's the basic overall overview of how to upload. Let me go and take a step back and okay, so this state shows one receipt. Now, let's see what it looks like when there's multiple receipts. So in this case, for the purposes of prototyping, I have another object that's going to represent, it's going to take me to another state where there's multiple receipts. So if I drag and drop, here we have a lot of receipts in here. For the user, how do they tell how many receipts they have? We have this information up here. We have 76 receipts. By default, they can sort by newest uploads first, which is the default, and they can group by months. Now what this does is, here we have all the receipts that were uploaded for June 2015 are under that header. Everything for May 2015 is under that, March, and so forth. Now for each one, they could do select all, and that would select each receipt within that particular grouping. Now, why do they need to select these files? Basically, when you select a receipt, what we're doing is we're going to consolidate all those actions before where it was just on a receipt by receipt basis. You can select multiple and you can rotate, duplicate, download, or delete. Now notice that when I select and unselect these, this number right here changes. So that just lets them know, hey, you might have 76 selected, you might have 1. In this case, you have 3. So however many they have selected, they can do deselect all, and that will unselect all the receipts that are selected in this panel. Now from here, they can also do zoom. Basically, when they click this icon, which, mind you, the comps will be slightly different than what you see here. This is just a wireframe, and James' designs, I believe, show the checkbox up here and the magnifying glass up here. So when clicking or tapping the magnifying glass, the same thing that happens now will happen in the existing system. A light box with that image will appear, and for PDFs, we're going to use the PDF object component that's freely available online, and I believe I referenced in the wireframe document, to allow pagination of PDFs, because currently that's not done in a way that allows the person to see multiple pages within the PDF. So, once we have receipts that we need to create expenses from, the user can essentially drag and drop a receipt to this empty expenses panel, at which point, say we select one and we drag it. Let's see. So when I click create expense, this will happen. So creating expense from receipt, the date, all the information that we currently gather now, it's just going to be in a different design that you'll get from James. So I can either cancel, which would do nothing, or if I create expense, fill out the information and do create expense, passive confirmation, and then a list of expenses here. Now this is just a sample list, but that expense line item would appear at the top. And also, let's see. So the other operation that we can do is attach expense. So we select some expenses, one or more, and then for the purposes of prototyping, I'm just going to show what it looks like when I start dragging and dropping. So if I show the drag start, so say I selected this one and dragged it. Actually, this would not be correct. And edit here. So to attach an expense, you basically drag and drop the receipt to the expense line item. Essentially how it's done now. Now the difference is currently we only support dragging of one because you can only see one at a time in the current system. But if you could drag and drop more than one if you like. For this prototype, just to show what it kind of looks like, I'm going to show what that interstitial screen state would be. So I had selected and started dragging this, and then this line item is highlighted. Now if I had selected more than one, both of these images or both of these receipts would be attached to this single line item. So once I let go of the mouse and I drop it on that, I would see receipt attached, and then it fades away. I wanted to show some nuances that's different from this version and the existing live site. So I'm going to reset the prototype to default, and notice that when I do, okay, so currently I have all these expenses and I have some receipts. Look at the header bars for each. So expenses has search and filter, receipts has the add receipt button, and when I set it to default, basically when there are no expenses that exist, expense line items that exist, the search and filter buttons should not be visible. However, the add receipt button on the receipts panel will be. This is basically to help simplify the initial experience to help focus the user on what to do. Here in this state, they can add receipt, they can drag and drop here, they can drag and drop receipts here. Now, one thing to note is, well, how do I drag a receipt here if there's none here? We'll support the ability to drag and drop an image or PDF onto the expenses panel, and that will either create a new expense, or if you're dragging and dropping onto, say, a particular expense item, it would do the same kind of action as before. It requires a little bit more work on a programming perspective, but it basically allows the person to kind of quick line or shortcut to creating an expense line item by dragging a receipt from their desktop directly onto the panel.